Doing another media highlights video today of some of the movies, books, content creators that I've enjoyed this past month. I recently finished Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. If you know anything about Brandon Sanderson, his books are quite large. They're quite intimidating, and it took me a little while before getting here. I knew that I would want to read his books because I'm a huge fantasy and sci-fi lover. And I knew that starting with Mistborn is recommended, as I've seen online. So this is a terrific book. It's about a thieving crew which is planning to overthrow this evil villain that is called the Lord Ruler in this book, who is this kind of all-knowing, omnipotent figure, how they paint him in this book. Um, but he is evil since he suppresses kind of the majority of the population using magic. The world building and the magic system in here is very intricate. There's a lot of information in this book. The primary mode of magic is how the Mistborns, the the people who live in this world, but in particular the Mistborns, consume metal and can use that metal to grow stronger, to push themselves against different buildings, surface areas, depending on the metal that they're consuming. And I will say it's very helpful if you ever need. At the end of this particular edition of the book, there's kind of a legend on the different metals and their effect and the misting title that is associated to each metal. And that's very helpful if ever you forget, such as I did. The ending of this was also mind boggling. I could not have expected anything. You're left throughout the book with a lot of questions, with a lot of loose ends, and you're wondering how it's going to tie up. It tied up beautifully. Could not have expected it. I was on the edge of my seat when I was reading the end, and I've heard that Sanderson is a pro at that. I loved the writing. I will say that if you're somebody such as myself, I do really love fast-paced books. This one is not necessarily the fastest pace at the beginning, in my opinion. It could vary from person to person, but keep that in mind that it is like a longer book, and it took me a little while to keep going back to it. Yeah. On to movies. I watched some terrific movies I was gonna say this year, this month. I recently watched Frankenstein on Netflix. The movie was directed by Guillermo del Toro. It was such a good movie. It was probably one of my favorites really this year. I loved it so much. So it takes kind of the classic tale by Mary Shelley and twists it a little bit to use a lot of religious symbolism was kind of trickled throughout the movie, but I think that like the overarching theme that I found was kind of the the parallels between the creature and its creator and who the real monster is. Some could even argue, such as myself, I would argue that the most human character in that movie was actually the creature. And there's this innocence, this gentleness that the creature has from being born into this world that I think tugs at the heart and really kind of makes you very attached to it. The movie also touches on like familial relationships and kind of the patterns specifically between the father and the son. You see that in the first portion of the movie, which kind of covers the creator's tale, and then the second part, which covers the creature's tale. And there are parallels drawn between both relationships. I also loved the gothic atmosphere throughout the whole movie. It's so opulent and rich. The colors are so captivating, and I couldn't help but notice it all. Notice the elaborate costumes, the hair, the creature's very intricate body. It was just a feast for the eyes, truly. I also really liked how the creature, although he's gentle and longs for connection so much, he also has this rage associated to that, to those qualities of feeling misunderstood, unworthy, and alone that he takes out on his creator, especially towards the end of the movie. I just want to read the final quote of the movie because it's so good. It's by Byron, um, and I was crying definitely when I read the quote popped up, um, because I think it's just the overarching theme of the movie, and the quote goes, "The heart will break and yet brokenly live on." It's so good. It's so, so good. I highly recommend Frankenstein if you haven't seen it already. Another terrific movie that I watched this past month was Superman. Um, this is not the same, obviously, as Frankenstein, but there's kind of like similar themes as I was thinking about it a little bit. Something that I pulled from this film as well was the importance of leading with kindness towards everyone and everything. You see it throughout the movie that Superman is focused on protecting people, protecting animals, protecting the most vulnerable in face of oppression, in face of greed and power. There's also this idea that the world will try to break you and tell you that you're evil and that you are unworthy. But remembering that there was another quote in the movie where um, he talks about choices. I have it here actually on my laptop, and Superman basically says, "I am as human as anyone. I love, I get scared. I wake up every morning, and despite not knowing what to do, I put one foot in front of the other, and I try to make the best choices that I can. I screw up all the time, but that is being human, and that's my greatest strength. And someday, I hope for the sake of the world, you understand that it's yours too." The writers of these movies are terrific. Like that that's beautifully written. So yeah, there's kind of this overarching idea that it's the choices that we make and the actions that we choose to lead with that shape us into being human, and Superman is no different. Another movie that's very similar in a way to Frankenstein, how you have two beings who are not from Earth, who are not quote unquote human, but they become the most human um, in these two contexts. Even Superman says in a quote, he says that the most punk rock thing is to see beauty in everything, interesting people right away, and not being filled with doubt. Although he does doubt himself throughout the movie, there is this innocence again to him in believing in the good. Those were my two movies of November. They were incredible. I loved both of them. I want to touch upon an article that recently came out that caused a lot of uproar, I find, on social media, and that is the article titled, "Is Having a Boyfriend Embarrassing?" This article was written by Shante Joseph, and there was a point where my TikTok feed and my Substack was just filled with articles and videos on this particular piece. And basically, she argues that women are often caught between two worlds, but that she doesn't enjoy when content, or more specifically, women, or how women shift from kind of independent content to the boyfriend driven content, and how she tends to mute people who shift that way or who make their content only about their partner and their boyfriends. And she also touches on how women are kind of aware of the quote unquote embarrassing nature of men, and that they tend to subtly post about them. I think the final paragraph of this article summarizes in a good way what the author is conveying, which is that there's nothing wrong with falling in love, but there's also nothing wrong with embracing your singleness, especially now in a world where having a boyfriend is embarrassing, and that it's no longer kind of this symbol of status, and that openly criticizing heteronormativity is currently happening, such as with this article itself. Um, and that now there's nothing wrong, deemed wrong, with women who are single and who are not actively pursuing a relationship. And it's almost a coveted um, symbol to be that. I personally found the article quite interesting. My opinion on it is that it all contextually depends. I think the uproar that it caused is the fact that some people might take it more personally and defend their relationship and be like, well, no, I don't think that it's right to do that, to just mute people because of they're posting their partners. But I think the article itself opens a good discussion on the online dynamics of relationships versus the dynamics that are actually happening in real life. It's not black or white for anybody. I think if you're in a good, open, loving relationship, it doesn't mean that your aura is, lesser, and that everybody's muting you and that you're less than a girl who's single. Um, and I think if you are in a stable relationship, you know that. But I also think that embracing this group of of single women who don't necessarily feel the pull towards relationships is also good, and it kind of um, reflects a shift in our society, because women are no longer, or less likely now, to get married when they're 19 and 20 than, let's say, before the 2000s. All that to say, you can take the article with a grain of salt. You can take it as a critique of relationships. And I think the more we do have different types of conversations, the better it is for all of us who are in different stages in our life. And whatever works for you is what works for you, as long as you are reflecting and growing within your own personal life. You don't have to get like super wrapped up with the internet in general. It's not real life, So that's kind of the reminder that we can also push. I want to mention two content creators that I love, that I love so much, specifically on TikTok, and that is Paloma. She does more beauty content, so related to makeup and a little bit of lifestyle. And also, her videos are tremendously funny, in my opinion. She has this way of creating content that I find is so hilarious, but I also really turn to her for kind of advice on beauty and makeup. I think she's knowledgeable in that way and doesn't sugarcoat anything, which is refreshing sometimes to have on your feed. So I really enjoy and love her content. And the second creator is Andrea, also on TikTok here. Again, she does more beauty related content, like makeup tutorials. And I just love the way she does her makeup. And again, love her content. I think she's hilarious. And and every time I'm on the app, I'm like, I hope they posted a new video, because I love them. They post good content. So those are my two content creators of the month for sure. Those are my media highlights of the month. I hope you enjoyed, and if you have any recommendations, please let me know. The month of December is coming up, and I'm really excited to read, to watch movies, to get cozy, um, to watch Christmas movies. Oh my god, I love Christmas movies. I love Christmas, but Christmas movies are just like, ooh, so nostalgic and fun.